There's a point in advisor change where the client can smile, nod, and still be quietly bracing. Not because they need more detail first, but because they're trying to figure out whether they're about to become unknown.
Yes, and that's why this tool matters so much. The risk isn't only that the plan transfers and the accounts transfer, it's that the relationship starts to feel less personal in the process.
Right, because that's really the deeper fear here. Not just, who's taking over? More like, am I going to have to explain this whole relationship from scratch?
Yes, and that's what we're getting into in this mini episode. This is Advising Humans, where we talk about the human side of advice, especially the part that doesn't always get said out loud. And in these shorter episodes, we focus on one practical move advisors can use right away. This one is about the trust transfer map and how to use it so the client actually feels that continuity.
Because this is one of those tools that keeps the transition from feeling generic when what the client really needs is to feel known.
The trust transfer map isn't just about passing along notes. It's about making sure the parts of the relationship that matter most actually carry forward.
So let's start with the reframe. This is not just a note-taking tool.
No, not at all. It's a trust tool. It helps the incoming advisor carry over more than facts. It helps them carry over context too. And that matters because trust doesn't automatically transfer just because a relationship gets reassigned. Clients don't just need continuity on paper, they need to actually feel it in the relationship.
That's the part I keep coming back to. They need to actually feel it.
Yes, because if the client hears, "We've got all your notes," but then the new advisor misses something basic about their spouse, their pace, their communication preferences, or what tends to make them anxious in meetings, the client doesn't experience that as continuity. They experience it as proof that something important got dropped.
So when should an advisor actually use the trust transfer map?
Ideally, before the first real transition meeting, it's most useful when the outgoing advisor, incoming advisor, or team is trying to pin down what actually made the relationship work beyond the usual notes and account details. It matters even more when the relationship goes back a long way, when the household is more complex, or when there's a real chance the client could feel like they're just being processed.
So this is really for the stuff that usually lives in somebody's head, not neatly in the file.
Yes, and that's why it matters so much. A lot of what makes a relationship work lives in things people just know and don't always write down. How much context the client likes before making a decision. Whether the spouse is quieter, but actually carries more concern. Whether the client wants direct answers first or needs a little more room to process. What not to gloss over. What not to make them repeat. The map gives that knowledge a place to go, so continuity doesn't depend only on memory or instinct.
Okay, so what does it prevent?
A few big things. First, it prevents that generic onboarding feeling. Second, it keeps the client from having to re-explain family dynamics, preferences, and sensitivities that should already be understood. Third, it lowers the chance that the incoming advisor sounds prepared but still feels off to the client. And fourth, it helps catch household misalignment early, because one person may look comfortable while someone else is quietly unconvinced.
That's really helpful because a lot of trust probably starts slipping there, not because of one big, obvious mistake.
It does. It often starts quietly. The advisor uses the wrong tone. They don't realize who actually needs reassurance. They miss the part of the relationship the client cared about most. And then the client starts scanning a little more, sharing a little less, keeping options open. A lot of the real risk starts there in that quiet drift.
Okay, so let's walk through what actually goes on the map.
I'd keep it to 6 categories. That keeps it clean and it keeps it usable. First, communication style. How does the client like to receive information? Concise, detailed, big picture first, slower paced, direct. Second, household dynamics. Who is the visible relationship holder and who else shapes trust or comfort in the background? Third, decision preferences. Does this client need time to think? Do they process verbally? Do they want options narrowed before decisions get discussed? Fourth, sensitivities. What tends to create friction, anxiety, defensiveness, or mistrust? Fifth, service expectations. What cadence, responsiveness, or follow through has made the relationship feel strong? Sixth, relationship history. What has mattered most in how they've been supported so far, and what should not get lost as the relationship shifts?
That's really clean, and I like that it stays human. It's not trying to capture everything, just the parts that really need to carry forward.
Yes, the power is in being selective. This isn't a biography, it helps the incoming advisor know what needs to carry forward, so the client can feel, pretty quickly, that they're not starting over.
So if I'm the incoming advisor, how do I actually use this without sounding too scripted?
Yeah, that part matters. You don't want to sound scripted, and you definitely don't want to sound like you're putting something on. I'd use it to shape how you show up, then reflect a few pieces of context naturally. Something like, I know it matters that this doesn't feel like starting over. I've taken time to understand how you've been supported, what matters most to you and your family, and what needs to stay steady as we move forward.
That's good. It signals continuity without sounding weirdly polished.
Right. Or you could say, part of my job here is making sure what has mattered most in this relationship doesn't get lost in the transition. I'd like to reflect back what I understand so far, and you can tell me what feels right and what feels missing. That gives the client room to correct it, add to it, or fill in what's missing without feeling like they're starting from scratch.
That's what I like about it. It feels collaborative, not, I already know everything, more like, I've done my homework and I want to get this right.
Yes, and that tone matters. Because continuity doesn't become real just because you say it does. The client has to actually feel that you understand them.
Can you give me a quick example?
Sure. Let's say the client has always needed a little more time before major decisions, and the spouse is less vocal in meetings, but actually carries more of the trust question. The outgoing advisor also knows that the client gets uneasy when communication becomes vague or overly polished. If the incoming advisor knows that, they might say, I know one thing that matters here is giving decisions enough room so they don't feel rushed. And I also want to make sure this feels clear for both of you, not just on paper, but in how support actually works going forward.
Wow, yeah, that would feel very different from just happy to be working with you.
Completely different. One sounds like a standard introduction. The other sounds like someone who already understands the relationship they're stepping into.
So, the bigger point here is that the trust transfer map helps the client actually see and feel that continuity.
It does. And that's a huge part of the job in advisor change. The client wants to feel that what mattered in the relationship was carried forward, not just the account details. The trust transfer map gives the advisor a simple way to do that.
And it probably helps the firm too because it makes the relationship less dependent on one person carrying all the context.
It does. Because once more of that relationship knowledge is visible and transferable, continuity becomes less fragile. It relies less on one person holding everything in their head and more on the team being able to carry that understanding forward together.
And that really brings us back to the bigger idea in this whole episode. Advisor change isn't hard only because a person changes. It gets hard when the client starts wondering whether the relationship will still feel personal, steady, and trustworthy.
Yes, and that's why a tool like this matters. It helps turn continuity into something the client can actually feel. Not through reassurance alone, but through evidence, through how you show up, through what you already understand, through what you don't make them repeat.
And that's really the standard here, not just did the handoff happen, more like did the client feel known while it was happening?
Right, because that's where trust either gets reinforced or starts to thin out. A lot of that comes down to whether the incoming advisor can carry forward the parts of the relationship that mattered most in a way the client can actually feel.
If this conversation made you think differently about what trust transfer really takes during advisor change, share it with another advisor or leader who cares about making clients feel known, not just reassigned.
And if you want the full meeting flow, language, and practical tools for making that happen, get the Advisor Change Transition Playbook Suite for advisors.
Because in advisor change, continuity is not just something you explain, it's something the client has to feel.
Thanks for listening to Advising Humans.
We'll see you next time.